Welcome to today's What's Happening podcast. I'm your host, Paul Murphy. I'm CEO of Advance, and this season we're interviewing GPT creators. What's Happening? The podcast is brought to you by my firm, Advance, the development team that turns prompts into products. And today we welcome my very special guest, Tylan Miller. He is owner of Otaku Solutions, and Tyler is what I would consider a GPT super creator. I will get into that in a second. Tylan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Paul. It's an honor. It's a pleasure. This is actually my first time speaking about GPTs, like in a podcast format to be shared with others. So I'm pretty excited about it. I've had a lot of talks in between communities and other smaller conversations, but to kind of give my perspective on a bigger platform, I appreciate you.
Awesome, absolutely. Well, Tyler, I want to start with your background. Like, how did you get into AI? What came before? How did GPT sort of like rocked your world initially, and you jumped all in because you jumped all in. So rewind before OpenAI GPT store. How did you get here, and what sparked your GPT excitement and praise?
Yeah, for sure. So that story I think is always funny. I have to go a while back. So my journey with technology and software starts, to be honest, when I was in middle school, when I was in the 8th grade. So I watch anime a lot. I love anime. Anime is one of the things that saved my life, along with technology. And basically, long story short, there was a certain person posting on Twitter, and I wanted to save those tweets that they were posting somewhere. And during this time, the first automation platform, IFTT, If This Then That, was out.
Yes.
And that's literally how I got into automations. No business. I was in school. I was like just looking at small things like that. And that was like the birth of that platform. So I was very into that. And after that, Zapier came out, right? And we started getting into this SaaS ecosystem, no code, low code, all these things. So that's where my journey really started. Now, during that time, from literally 8th grade when I was a kid to maybe about like my 20s, I was always good with technology, kind of like the gift of gab with technology.
Gift of the gab, I love it.
Yeah, I worked at Verizon. I worked at T-Mobile. I was always a tech guy. It was always like a skill I had, to be honest. Never did anything business, right? I was even around friends who were in multi-level marketing. They had businesses, but when it came to like, doing automations on a business level, because that's where my journey really starts, is automations. I'll explain that in a little bit. That's where that came. Basically, fast forward to about 4 years ago, I started my first business, which was a credit repair business. I'm very big on financial literacy, doing things in my community. And as you start your own business, right, you join communities, you join other things. People are on the same journey as you. They're trying to figure out what website to use, what software. I'm having problems. I need help with leads, right? And basically, I was the tech guy. I was helping people for free, whether it was paid, giving resources out. And it became apparent that why am I not using the skills that I've acquired over this long span of time for technology, right? And it was really specifically like the foundation of everything is automation. So I understood APIs, webhooks, connecting all those things, right? And so I made a shift. I said, hey, you know what? I'm basically going to be a technology and software company, and I'm going to provide, these services, because during that long time, like automation bridges to everything, right? So like if, I'm an automation specialist, and if somebody comes to me, it's kind of like they may say like, oh, I need a website. And let me rewind back because I have a couple of skills, right? Let's say somebody comes to me and like, I need a website. That leads to automation, right? Because they're not just asking for a website. What happens when somebody comes to this website? They fill out a form. They may book a calendar. You want automation to go off. You want a text, right? So like for me, automation is always the foundation of everything, right? And I just love automation. Yeah. Now, fast forward to when AI comes out, it's like, well, for me, it's a little different. Not that I wasn't hyped, but it was like, okay, how are we going to spice up automations with AI now, right? And all these other things like that. And that's really where my journey started. I got in from there. I won't lie, I hopped on the ChatGPT late, not for any particular reason, but I was just doing a lot of stuff and I didn't have my aha moment. And I don't even remember what my aha moment was. Maybe I was talking to a few people and I said, let me hop in here and, do some stuff. And it just made sense. It just made sense. And from there, as ChatGPT grew, we're like coming up on our 3rd year, started off with just, talking in the chat to instructions. Then it came to, now we're at GPTs, then we have agents, we have voice. And still, I'm not one to jump in a lot of things. But like I said, you can't Like the biggest thing for me with AI is not using it in what I call like the old school interface, which is the regular interface when you go to Chat GPT, right?
Yeah,
Because
Tyler, let me talk a little bit more about this because I love what you're saying here because a lot of people these days ask, where to start in tech. Where should a young person start in tech? Should they learn programming? Should they go to college? Should they study computer science? And the questions got harder to answer right now. It used to be, very, very easy. Learn HTML and then move on, or go to school and become a computer scientist. And with this AI revolution, things are changing. And I think the one thing I'm picking up, like you talk about automation. It's very much in line with some of the things that I see all the time and things that I've appreciated over the last few years, which is low code. Like low code is allowing people who are not programmers to do things like IFTT, which and Zapier, like to create these almost full cycle applications, but without having the background as a programmer. And it sort of highlights like the advice maybe to give young people right now. It's not go and learn Python. That can come if that's what you're into. But go put some of these pieces together. And then ChatGPT to tell me, you were putting all these pieces together with IFTT, and then ChatGPT arrived. Took you a while. What happened when you saw ChatGPT and started playing around?
It was, oh man, words can't really explain that first time. It was like, and like it's level. So at first I'm like, look up something, and then they couldn't look up anything at first, right? So I'm like, okay, well let's do something else, like the regular thing. So I approached it. By the way, talking about low code, and we'll probably get into it later, I'm a Make partner. Make is an automation platform.
Yes.
Right? So I provide services through Make, and I also educate through Make. So when it comes to, what was I going to say? The automation part for...
And then ChatGPT, you're talking about
ChatGPT. So
AI. When that...
What I did was take it across the 8 levels of your business. How can this help me in products? How can this help me in sales? How can this help me in IT? How can this help me in human resources? How can this help me in customer support, right? And doing all those things. And what clicked for me was, I am not a big fan of copying and pasting, Paul. Right? So why would I do everything in GPT to go copy and paste it somewhere else later? Which gets into the APIs and connect on the GPTs and all those other things, right? And I'm not saying it's a bad thing by no means for anybody hearing this. Like being inside of GPT is beyond great. But when it comes to real productivity, I think, and scalability, like, and I'll really touch on this later, why I went so hard with GPTs. If we're already in Chat GPT's ecosystem for any large language model, why would that not be connected to regular applications that you use now?
Absolutely.
To streamline that, right?
Yeah. And that's Tylan, this is probably similar for you as well. Like that's a lot of our business. It's like, integrating the power of AI with normal products, superpower. And it sounds cheesy, but it is. You're certainly, you just, it unlocks so much possibility. Tylan, I want to get into these GPTs because am I right in saying this? Is this correct to say that you have over 3,000 GPTs created at this point?
So I've created about 3,100 GPTs, and it sounds really crazy, but I think this podcast will give a really good, this is the first time I'm kind of sharing that process of how that even happened. Maybe even like, why did I make 3,000 GPTs? Are you showing these 3,000 GPTs and other things like that? So wherever you're free to begin, let's start.
Listen, get into it. Tell me your first GPT.
My first GPT.
Your very first GPT.
A custom GPT that creates GPTs. That was my first GPT.
Of course. Your first door entry was a gateway to all of these other things that you were toying with.
Exactly. And I'll start off of how that happened, right? So just like everybody else, we're getting content from YouTube. We're doing all these things. Now, I won't lie. I'm a very particular and weird person when it comes to thinking because I've been in the space so long, right? Like a lot of things they don't excite me the way they would excite the normal person that's just getting into this. And that's not bad. My excitement is looking at something different, right? So there's a gentleman who makes very great content by the name of Igor, AI Advantage. And as I was browsing through his content, a lot of things that he said, I resonated with. And at that time, his and it's still his lead magnet. His lead magnet was basically a Notion template that had and this is very important for just anything AI, with a framework of a GPT.
Yeah.
Right. So he said, like, hey, join what I'm doing. Here's this free Notion template of this GPT. You download the Notion template. It has these things for you that you just go plug in a GPT. Because my thing is, and like the hardest part for a GPT, I think, is if you're connecting it to something and what you want it to do, right? Because making a GPT is very straightforward. You have a name, you have a description, you have some instructions, you tie some knowledge to it, right? The next part is getting into like, what is it going to do? Is it doing multiple actions at once, such like prompt chaining? It's not just doing one thing at a time. Is it connected to another platform, sending that information after the prompt change? So I basically missed out on what he was selling at that time. And I only had access to those 10 templates. And for me, I'm actually really good at reverse engineering things. So as I was like going through this and looking, I'm like, man, how can I incorporate my own version, or what can I do? And it was like, well, how about I automate this? How about I just have somebody fill out a form? Yeah. And when they fill out a form, I have a prompt that goes to this to make that. So that's how that started, right? I just did it from like a form that just a webhook to GPT inside of like Zapier or Make, and then it gives an outline, right, of that same structure, but I just improved it. So what do you need for a GPT? And it basically came up with these 10 questions. What is the role of your GPT? What is the crucial knowledge that it knows? What is the task? Does it have any biases? Do you have any preferences or workflows when you use the GPT? Should it speak English? And after you answer these 10 questions, it's going to give you a framework that you can literally go plug and play or change, right? So that's the beginning. Yeah. Now imagine, I know you've seen it. So many people have spreadsheets of GPTs and all these other things. So I'll make it really fast. I came across a list of like 600 GPT examples. So I said, okay, ChatGPT, give me a summary of what these GPTs are, because I didn't want to make any duplicates. And then with that same formula I had, I said, okay, now run this, like basically not duplicate, but like make maybe 100 GPTs in this industry first, then do this next, then do this next, then do this next, right? Then it's like, that's version 1. Okay, what's version 2? Maybe I changed the prompt. Maybe I'm looking to, incorporate it with Gmail or do these other things, or like it just got so big. But basically the framework was, here I have a lot of information, and if I wanted to automate this to create different type of various models of GPTs, I would be able to do that. And all I really would need is a name and a description and maybe a few tasks of what that is, right? So it was very fun, and that's how I ended up coming up with
fascinating. I got a few things to touch on. One is like, it's like you're inside my head, by the way, when you're talking about how you created the automation of Zapier and this there and pulling it together. It's like, what I'm seeing is like you creating like a user, almost like you're creating a user experience to do something that would really be a lot more difficult and time consuming if you did it manually. Basically it's a UX. You're basically creating a user experience, making it more powerful. And then suddenly you're taking what you built, and then you're just plowing through GPTs and recreating them or doing your own spin on them of like whatever's you think is most valuable in each industry. Suddenly you're using GPTs to create GPTs, right?
Yes.
It's like, this is like the AI explosion, it's like AI starts making AI.
And another thing too, even though this is not the main point, just touch on it briefly, the other side of GPT is like where people really, there's, two sides. There's the monetization, as in like inside the platform, and there's outside the platform, right? So anything outside ChatGPT is referred to as an assistant because you're using the open API. Right. So it was also many people wanting to turn these GPTs into assistants. So this same framework, I can say, hey, you can plug in a GPT and you can go plug it in the playground for your assistant. And then you have other platforms out here that say, hey, look, if you have an assistant in the playground, just put it in your assistant ID and we'll turn it into a chatbot. So now in less than 10 minutes, people have a chatbot. They have a GPT inside and they have a chatbot outside if they go to the right platform to embed that or integrate it or do whatever they want. So it was really fascinating.
So Tylan, tell me what's like among these 3,100 GPTs, are there any of them that have like that sparked and what's your most used GPT? Do you have any of them that are really hitting it right now?
To be fair, I don't have a lot that are hitting it as far as people going out into the GPT store. I would say among more conversations that I have with people, and because I'm in a lot of communities.
Totally. And your ability to redo this all the time, right? Your ability for somebody to start with a GPT and you're like, well, I can turn this into something much greater very quickly. And because I have the system in place.
I was going to say the 3100 wasn't initially when I was doing that. So people could use 3100 GPTs. Like that time will come a little bit later, right? Like to be fair, the initial focus was this is how you can do this because it will be very beneficial to you in some way or form. Right now, on the other side, I have clients, I have work that I've done for enterprises where I've made them custom GPTs for their whole team that connects to their CRMs or certain things, right? Like that's where that actually comes from. I'm trying to get inspiration and actual use cases for what you're going to be using this for what I see in the future, if that makes sense, right? So because I can do all these different, I mean, some of them might not even make sense. It might be a little bit of the duplicate, right? But for somebody, that version might make sense. And they say, oh, I'm able to go do this and whatever else they may want to do.
Yeah. So what's your current, what's your focus at the moment? What are you, if someone wants to hire Tylan Miller or wants to buy from you, what is your core product that you're selling? Is it yourself? Is it consulting? Is there a product of one of these GPTs that has got some potential?
So a lot of that is coming soon. Right now, it's consulting people. I have an hourly rate. Sometimes I do projects, which is depending on that project. I may give a full price or it may just be by hourly. What I'm really planning to do is because I actually am first an educator. So like I was saying earlier, I am a Make partner. I'm a Make educator. I'm also part of another platform called No Code Ops, where I'm about to be a no code mentor, teaching about no code platforms. And I've always been wanting to do that for a while and have done that in smaller versions. After this podcast, actually, after this week, I've been releasing a community called No Codepreneurs, which is basically a paid community where people can come and get tools, resources, support, training, workshops, cohorts, all around no code, learning how to build a SaaS product, learning how to automate, like you were saying earlier, the foundation. So you can do these things, whether it's in your business or outside the business. And then later on, I will be building some products that go along. To answer your question, the whole thing is I am working to build my own platform to help monetize GPTs and do other things later.
Love it. I'm dying to hear more about that community. As soon as that goes live or whenever you can send me that, I will share it. I will put it out there. I know a lot of people that would appreciate it. So it's good work. It's super important work, but that's fantastic. Tylan, I'm going to move a little bit slightly aside from your GPTs and your experience, like AI generally, where do you see both GPTs and generative AI and AI going? What's your unpopular opinion, or what's your sneaky suspicion of what's going on in the world, or what are you excited by?
Man, you know what? So that question is always interesting because I really try not to have this AGI talk and Terminator stuff and all that. I honestly feel like if that's going to happen, which it may, that's going to come at a later time, hopefully, right? And there are people in place to take care of those things for us. Us worrying about that, and I'll be fair, we fully don't know how those things work and all those other things, right? It's a different story. But what I see for AI right now is, and very soon I'm just going to be calling it your assistant, because that's really what it is. It's really an assistant for a lot of people, and it can assist you in a lot of ways. It could be chat, like you said, just having a regular conversation. Right now, I'm actually playing a lot with AI voice. Yes. So I think AI voice is going to really be amazing. And just some actual use cases that I've actually seen where people are already, monetizing this over 6 figures is AI voices drive-throughs. Right? Like amazing. We have AI therapists that you can call. And it's not to diagnose you, but to talk if you're feeling schizophrenic or anxiety. Those things are amazing. Just from the perspective of people who have a hard time talking with other people can now talk with something, even though it's a robot, that will be realistic, no biases, no judgment, none of those other things. That's going to help them be productive in so many ways. Yeah. And then you have the, automations and platforms and all these things and that, that's like, there's so many things every day. Sumo, regular platforms, people like me wanting to invent their own little platforms for their own community, like the assistance that AI is going to give you. And I want to touch on this earlier, going back to a question you asked. I didn't get the answer, but I think it ties in. Like, where do you start, right? Like, I believe everyone should understand the fundamentals of APIs, right? The way that programs can talk to each other regardless of what program it is, because that is the foundation for how all of these things connect, no matter what. And the great gift about me that I like to really express is like, going way back when, all I know is APIs and webhooks. I don't know any code at all. Now, through my experience of working with a lot of clients and just building stuff, I've seen code. I know how some of it looks. Now I'm able to go in Chat GPT to help me. And I've actually I built the Chrome extension. I built my own GitHub clone before, like I rewrote something in Tylan. I actually did it so much that I rewrote an entire GitHub project before I even put it in AI. And this is the funny part. I only missed 3 lines before the AI actually helped me out. Like,
That's amazing.
Right? Like, and real quick, developer is used so loosely. Everyone is a developer, right? There's developers who from the coding perspective, but like now, obviously everybody are like what we call, I guess, like natural developers. You're talking in a natural language, whether it's Chat GPT helping you out or other things. And that's very powerful. You don't have to be like me, super techie, 10 years in a space or all those other things. If you know the foundation, right? And if you understand that, and maybe you go through a good course or you're in a good community with other people around, you're going to, succeed. There are so many stories now of people who are not tech savvy, who have amazing products that they build, who are making, they're good with life. They are retiring. So many things are happening. And it's amazing. That's how Perplexity was built, like on top of Chat GPT first, using that. And now they're like better than Chat GPT. Yeah. It's amazing.
Tylan, I think they're possibly the greatest words of wisdom I've heard on this podcast for younger listeners. And it's not, so maybe I'm paraphrasing. You're saying, don't start with coding, start with understanding APIs. Yeah. Start with, so it's about data structures and about how the internet works rather than the ability to write lines of code, because you have
those other things it's going to overlap like yes. that. And that's why I say that it's going to overlap, whether it's you being curious, like for instance, GitHub is a good example for me. I've been on GitHub for years. And I just made my first project this year. Right. And that was because, and this may answer your question, going back, what's one of my favorite GPTs. So I have a GPT called GPT agent to GPT agent. And this was inspired by a project. So I'm another piece of advice. Yeah. Go join the OpenAI forum and just read through and look at a lot of stuff there. You will learn a lot and see a lot. So through me doing that, somebody posted something that said GPTs talking to each other. And I was like, that sounds interesting. What could he mean by that? I've never heard of that. So I went to go look at this amazing article, and literally what it is. So we talk about agents, right? Basically, multiple AI agents that do multiple roles can work with each other. Crew AI, chat dev are great examples of those things, right? But imagine this in a GPT by itself. So basically what this is, think of you have you need to do like a writing assistant or a writing project, right? You go to this GPT and it has 3 personas. I can have how many ever, but this one just has 3 personas, right? And these 3 personas work on a junior level, an intermediate level, and a senior level. And they will delegate tasks to each other. So like, hey, I need to go make a blog about how people should learn about APIs and automations. This first person is this first persona is going to go do the research and get all the information about this, right? The second this persona is going to write this proposal and do all this stuff, right? And then the third persona is going to go talk to this other, the last one, and finalize it, right? And then the actual GPT manages those 3 personas, so you don't have to do anything. So I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like, how do I do this? And because it's not on a platform to use APIs, I basically had to use Visual Code and use GitHub and go through this project, right? And it was amazing. And that's the experience I'm saying of how I learned some code, how I learned JavaScript. And then I used that to rewrite my own version of the GPT agent. So it actually is based off my custom GPT that I made. Now, when you go to this GPT, the GPT agent, you just basically say like, hey, this is like what I'm working on, and it's going to create those personas from scratch instead of it already being a persona.
So it's going to pull in the experts for you. You don't even know who you need to help, and suddenly
what you need to have is going to make it on the fly, and they're going to talk to each other to delegate and help your programs. And like those are things I'm hoping to build a platform around, and it not just be like locally and stuff like that. But yeah, that's like my experience of how I learn code and stuff. I'm not going out and taking boot camps. And I'm not saying don't, like those things are super important, but I'm just saying like where the focus is if you want to be in the world of technology, the first layer is most likely always going to be, how do these two things talk to each other, which are APIs and webhooks.
Yes. You got to go get your hands dirty. Like ultimately, you know, you can go through these boot camps or go to college, but it's like until you're really solving a real problem for yourself and you understand the pressure around that and the drive to complete it, like that's where this, you know, you can see your passion. I'm in the same space. I've gone through many of the thought processes you have, to even talking about like creating Chrome extensions. That's the first thing. I was like, I've wanted to do this. I'm not sure exactly how to do it. Suddenly GPT helps me to do that very quickly. But no, I love the story. I love the passion. I love that, you know, it's like take something, start playing with it, join the communities, because there's a ton of communities out there.
Yeah. And you know, this may be a little side, but one of the reasons why I really like started going hard this year with making content and doing stuff is because, and it'll always be like this, but this is my small part, is like the hardest part for people is when they first start. Obviously, it's for various reasons, but it's because of the content that they're consuming, to be fair. And right now, what's happening with a lot of this stuff, and I don't think it's bad, and I understand why people make some content like this, because it's ultimately to bring in people for leads for their programs, but it's really not the information they need, and it's not hands-on. But ultimately what happens is people engage this content. Like I'll use a very particular example, and this is across a lot of things, right? So in the Make platform, a lot of people download templates. The problem with downloading these templates is if it doesn't work, if it breaks, you don't know how to fix it, right? And if you're not paying this person, or you're not in a program or doing whatever, like, of course, they're most likely going to help you, right? But if they don't, then where are you, right? Yeah. Probably going to go back to end up paying somebody or taking the time that you wouldn't anyway to learn how to automate this and fix this. And that's what happens a lot. I'm like, well, where did you build this? Did you do that? Oh, I downloaded it from somebody. And it's like, well, did they help you out? You're like, no, they didn't help me out. Like, oh, okay. Now we got to go back and like, do you even want to learn? Like that's one thing I'm big on too. Like, do you yes, you have to know, but are you knowing to build yourself or to go hire someone to build this for you so you don't have to worry?
Here's how I feel about it, because I feel like, especially early on, you need the wins. And the wins could be through, you know, writing a line of code if it's coding. And suddenly you're like, wow, that did something. I wrote a few things and suddenly I produced got the result of an equation or whatever it might be. But that's why I love some of the low codes and applications, because you can get that dopamine hit pretty early. You know, and like how I learned programming back in the day was reverse engineering an application called Dreamweaver. Dreamweaver would write the code and I would copy it and slowly learn it by copying it. And because I got through the reps so many times, I picked it up, you know, but the big thing for me, and I think it still exists in other ways, was like how to get that hit of, wow, I just did something, you know, and then that can lead you to the next one. You need to get that next hit of like, you know, do something bigger, better, bolder, whatever else, but you know.
Exactly. And that's what keeps me up at night. Like that's how I ended up getting through the other GPT project. Like the guy was actually pretty surprised. He's like, wait, you did this and you don't know anything? And I'm like, it's like keeping me up at night. Like I just have an itch. Like I got through the first part and then I'm like press and run and then it says complete. Like, oh yeah, like where we go next from here? So I definitely understand.
I love it. So Tylan, we're going to be moving to the end of the podcast. Can you let everyone know where they can find you? If they want to either consult with you or learn more, just connect, where can they find you?
Yeah, for sure. So you can find me on YouTube at tylanmiller.tech. I have a personal blogging website called tylanmiller.tech as well. My actual business website, Otaku Solutions.io. You can go there as well. And then if you happen to be in communities like FAPI or No Code Ops, my community, NoCodePreneurs.com. That will be live like probably after this weekend for sure. By the time this podcast is up, it'll be live. And yeah, LinkedIn, Tylan Miller. You can find me on there, and I'm always happy to help and answer questions and stuff like that. But yeah, my main thing next is having a community where people can pay, because like I have so many requests now, and some of them are the same. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I don't mind getting paid hourly for a project, but really now, like, where I think it's at is, and I've always been like this, but having a community that is just, hey, look, you can pay me this set amount. I'll give you all those resources. I'll give you all those templates. You'll have the support. We're all doing the same thing. We can share and grow. But also what really inspired me is there's these two programs called 100 Days of AI and 100 Days of No Code. So next month, I'm going to be starting those, doing them each one by one. And basically what it is like you get a newsletter of 30 minutes of like literally how to build an app on Software, how to build something on Bubble, how to do this. So I'm going to like go through that, record that journey of showing people like, yes, even though I'm technical, yes, we're going to start from scratch here, right? And you can do that too and build my own version of those cohorts and invite people to do things and teach as well.
Love it. Tyler, I love this part of the story is to pass on the knowledge, teach others as well, and getting, I'm sure as well, like getting personally inspired by doing that and honing on your own skills and capabilities by, there's no better way to learn by teaching. I love it.
For sure. I've, like also too in my community, I volunteer for a nonprofit called Teens Exploring Technology. So what we do is we go out. So it's like low income housing where I live, and we go out to this low income housing. We knock on all the doors, and our goal is to get kids from 8th to 12th grade, brown and black girls, boys and girls that are into gaming, that are into technology. They may not even be into gaming. And what we do in December is we have a hackathon where we like Google Comes, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. And we basically have like this project where we get the kids in the groups and they build their own business. So they actually literally learn how to code from scratch and build a website and do like a whole prop, like a whole Shark Tank thing. No, it's like so amazing. So I'm like really big on, joining these communities and, doing all these other stuff. It's been time that I, make my own. I kind of like being in others a little bit more than having my own. That sounds a little bit crazy, but I am at that point now where it's like, okay, I do need to have my own and have some things set up and do, because we all have our different ways of how we teach and do things and stuff like that.
Well, I will definitely pick up the conversation outside of this later because I have some things that I would love to collaborate with you on, but that's super exciting. We will include a bunch of these links in the description down below. Tylan, is there anything else you'd like to share or anything else you'd like to ask me while you have me on the call?
Yeah, I was, so I found out about you guys through school, through the last guest that you had on. I can't remember her name. She just made the GPTs.
It was Julie, right? Julie was awesome.
Yeah, and stuff like that. And when I saw you guys' platform, I was like, that's any kind of platform or organization like this, I'm always super kind of giddy about, like, ooh, they're like all about no code. And they're like talking about it and doing stuff, because you really, even though I've been in the space a lot, I feel like I see it a lot, but it's not, I guess it's different because maybe it's like these are actual like big SaaS companies and stuff, whereas we're not the big SaaS companies and stuff into that space talking. So I think it's different. I was just wondering, like, what inspired you guys to start this podcast and do that and invite people and stuff?
Absolutely. A couple things from a business perspective. Ultimately, we feel like there are tons of creators on the GPT store that have created great GPTs, MVPs, but we want to help turn them into products. So if there's any GPT creators out there that believe that they want to improve the user experience, maybe it's with mobile apps, maybe it's a SaaS platform, fully customized, programmable web, or it's a completely like a big application. It's basically taking a GPT and turning it into a real business, product-focused business, and that's where we come in. So that's a big part of it. And then the other part of it is just that it speaks to me personally. Like, it's a really easy, accessible way to get into technology. And I'm seeing entrepreneurs being created. I'm seeing entrepreneurs sparking out of like you've been in tech for 10 years, but there's other people that are just coming along and suddenly they play with ChatGPT and suddenly they're creating their own mini product. And I think it's spectacular. It's like a new wave of entrepreneurs. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, both of those reasons are amazing. I don't even think I've ever heard somebody say the first reason how you said that, like, so perfectly. Like, we're helping people turn GPTs they create into products like that. Right. That's like really, really amazing for sure. And then the second part, I feel the same way, or I think it goes into the first part. Like, there are so many GPTs that are out there that are not explored, and you have other platforms that are helping do that, like GPT Hunters, GPT Search, like all these other things. And I know ChatGPT is like changing things for like GPTs to be searchable now, like by themselves and stuff. So, obviously we're like very new in this. Like 3 days ago, free users just got the ability to even use GPTs, right? So like, And that's where I'm happy about, like, oh, I've made all this stuff now. Like, okay, now the free users, oh, now it's time to go fine tune and make some stuff up.
Tylan, it's accessibility, right? Even just like you said, the opening up so that non-paying users can get to this stuff, so important. But then we see this as well. Like I'm sure sometimes you wake up and you feel like you're so far behind some of the guys in tech that know so much about AI. And I feel the same way myself. And then I think about like everybody else who is just trying to keep up. The podcast here is to try to, educate people and show them a little bit more about the GPT world. But also where I feel like 3 Advanced fits into the picture is to provide user experiences for the masses, to make it truly accessible, that, the GPT and OpenAI will change, and the audio and the voice is changing, making it more accessible. And there will be more and more things that happen over there. But also there's an opportunity for people like you and I to help more people get on this train. And, we can do that to user experience. You talked about it. We do that too. And then just, putting it out here in a podcast, the communities you're building, the more we can bring into this revolution, the better. I know there's a lot of people who are cynical, they're fearful. There's very good reasons, but the best way to challenge that is to bring people in, have them experience what is possible using GPT, AI, and everything like it.
On that last part of what you said, what I find interesting is, obviously, if you don't understand something, you're scared or you fear, right? But even besides that, like the people who are wanting to actually understand, I always find that when I meet somebody that says, oh, I don't like AI because it did this and did that, after the education part, after you give them whatever education you may have given them, and then you give them a scenario to go play in ChatGPT, it's an entirely different story. It's always so interesting and fun I think it'll be like that for everybody. Like, there are going to be some ways people use AI and other things like that are not ethical and that you don't like, and other things like that. Like, I know a lot of creators who are teaching on how to make GPTs, but they're telling people to go prompt inject somebody's GPT. I'm like, I don't think you need to do that to learn how to make GPTs, right? But like I said, everybody teaches different and does different things. But when you strive to educate first around that and say, look, one of the real quick, because I think it's really important. Like, the biggest thing is data for ChatGPT, and I'm like, well, that one, you can turn that off. But even besides that, if you just use the API, none of your data is being used, right? Then we educate on things like Microsoft Azure, like how you can self-host. And all your data is for sure, right? So it's like, oh, I didn't know. There we go. And then it's this whole different conversation and things like that. So like you said, those are the things I live for, to really educate, because when people have a clear understanding, everything from then on is going to be better on their journey of what they're trying to accomplish.
Well, Tylan, I could talk to you all day long, but I'm going to wrap it up. Tylan Miller, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. It's been a blast. I really enjoyed the conversation for the last 45 minutes. It was awesome. To everyone else, thank you for joining too for this episode of What's Happening, the series on GPT creators. Thanks again, Tylan, for joining us. Podcast, as you know, is brought to you by 3 Advanced. That's the apps and AI development team for startups. And don't forget, we have this podcast available on YouTube. It's Spotify, the usual platforms, but also our newsletter. We have a What's Happening newsletter that arrives every Tuesday into your mailbox. It's news and tech, it's memes, it's accessible, fun tech content that will educate and hopefully entertain. So get up to date and all that. Go to 3advanced.com/news. Tylan, thanks again. Everybody else, see you next time.
Bye, everybody.